Texas back.
But I plan to make well over 1,000. I don't plan on going to sleep tonight.
Probably go 71 to 68. UNC versus Kansas.
Why did that get bring up? Why are we doing that?
Woo suey, pig suey.
I would disagree with the hot hand part because, like I said, Longhorns won 19 of their last 20.
I hope it's not close. I hope Texas gets destroyed.
I think because I would have San Diego State in this matchup, I have to go UConn.
Texas friends, feel free to DM me on the Twitter, which you don't know, and that's for good reason.
Hey y'all, my name is Riley Dutcher, and I'm smarter than all you guys because I won Outsiders Opinions Second Bracket Challenge. Now back to Austin and Kevin.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our March Madness Opinions of the Week. I'm Kevin, and alongside our beloved co-host and constant member on the podcast is Outsiders Opinions March Madness expert Jake.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm really excited to talk today.
It's been a weird year. We're not to March Madness yet. We're not even in March, but the Big Ten has some problems. And Jake, you and I have had multiple conversations about this fact. So I'll just start out with the big question, the question that we kind of hint at. What is the problem with the Big Ten?
There is a major problem going on with the Big Ten, and it's going under the radar. People are not necessarily picking up on it. It is one of those things that only bites people in the butt come March, because during the regular season, these teams look really, really good.
Yeah, that is true. And we want people to have relatively good brackets. We don't want them to be in the dark when it comes to these problems. I remember you and I last night, we watched the Penn State-Illinois game. We know that wasn't last night, but we watched it. And we noticed some of the problems that they have. A constant problem has been their defense and lack of effort, right?
Yeah, the main thing I see in a lot of Big Ten defenses, and I don't know why it spans the entirety of the Big Ten and most of their teams, but it just seems like all of them play with a certain lack of effort, or maybe not lack of effort, but maybe they just don't know what they're doing and where they need to go. It seems like coaching in the Big Ten, and I don't know why it's not just the Big Ten, but most of the teams in the Big Ten seem to have this, I don't know, parasite of lack of understanding of what makes a good defense. Because I'm watching these teams, and I'm watching guys like teams like Illinois saunter their way down the court on defense and not get back in transition when Penn State's coming down the floor. And I'm watching these little things that aren't executed efficiently, and these little things are what wins you games in March. And so teams like Illinois and Purdue, like Illinois does it better than Purdue, but Purdue doesn't know how to switch. I watched the entirety of the Purdue-Ohio State game. I don't remember one time where they switched. And you don't have to switch to have a good defense, but if you don't switch, you got to be able to help. And their help defense was lackluster, and they don't know when to trap, and they don't know when not to trap, and it just seems like they don't understand what's going on, and I feel like it's a coaching issue. What are your thoughts, Austin?
Yeah, 100%. And I have a question for you, and I know the answer to this, but for the people who are listening and like, well, this doesn't matter. They'll figure it out in March. Do you think that this is a problem come March?
Absolutely, because this is a symptom of things we've seen. That we saw it last year. I mean, we haven't seen a Big Ten team do well in the tournament since Michigan in what year was that?
2021. 2021, they made the Elite Eight and lost to UCLA. That was the last long run from a Big Ten team, but the last team to make the Final Four was Michigan back in 2018.
And you don't have to make a Final Four to be good in March Madness. I mean, making an Elite Eight's already a big deal. But Michigan's the only team that has done that in the Big Ten. And it's something about their culture, maybe. I'm not sure. But Purdue has been hyped up every year and has failed to make the mark that they want to make. Illinois was up and down. They were the number 1 seed and lost in the second round to a team that out-efforted them in Loyola Chicago as an 8th seed. And so it seems like I'm looking at lack of effort in the Big Ten, and I'm at the point where I see it and I'm like, that doesn't that's the most important thing in March. You can miss a couple shots, you can miss an assignment, but you have to be playing defense and you have to play effort, like full effort all the time. And when I see guys on Illinois like not know that on a pick you need to actually, I don't know, it's kind of hard to I'm not going to describe it on this play on this podcast, but there are multiple times where assignments are missed, people are just blowing by defenders, and it seems like they just either don't know how to play or don't care to play. But then we see that's a very high level of effort on offense where guys are driving and moving. And so it seems like there's too much of an emphasis on offense, or not too much of an emphasis, but a lack of emphasis on defense in the Big Ten. And it's a recipe for disaster because, as we saw last year, a defensive minded team in San Diego State beat out all these offensive minded teams, including Alabama, to go to the final or to go to the championship. So I feel like it is an issue that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, talking about Purdue, and Jake, you mentioned switching, and something that I thought of is kind of big man. We saw the Jazz kind of deal with this when they had Rudy Gobert. I know it's NBA versus college basketball, but how does Zach Edey, just his size, and do you think that impacts their level of switching if they're doing a pick and roll, the opposing team on Purdue?
It would, because he's so big, and having him switch on a guard would be disastrous. Um, but I was seeing two guards on Purdue not switch and two forwards on Purdue not switch because Edey would maintain a man on man against the big guy. But what I saw in Ohio State is they kind of ran on the perimeter a little bit and forced Edey to stay on the perimeter defensively, which opened up the inside and the interior, which is how they were able to win. Um, and they did. Ohio State just out efforted Purdue on rebounds and on defense, and it was just. And Ohio State's not even that good either. Like, and Penn State's not even that good against Illinois. Like, these aren't great teams that are beating the top 15 ranked teams in the country because of effort issues. And so any team that has like any team in March Madness, if they have a stretch five, a center who can run, or a big guy who can run in the perimeter and hit threes, like a couple days ago, the bracketology had them possibly ranked up, matched up against Texas, in the round of 32. Dylan Dessou is a stretch five who hits 54% of his threes. And while he doesn't shoot a lot of threes, he can hit them. And he runs on the perimeter, and they run perimeter offenses, and that's going to force Edey to come out a little bit because they run a man offense or a man defense, and or at least they ran it against Ohio State. I don't know. It just seems like they don't game plan well enough or know how to properly defend basic things. Because Austin and I were watching the Illinois Penn State game. Austin, how many times did Illinois get beat on a backdoor cut?
A lot. And there was a lot of times they were met at the rim, but the guy didn't even jump or try to contest a wide open layup that they were taking. It was just lackluster defense. And to kind of answer your question, Kevin, yes, Zach Edey is part of the problem on the defensive side, but you can game plan around that. I go to Boeheim and Syracuse's 2-3 defense. Hey, you want a guy to just stay near the paint? You could run a defense that not saves you from Edey's problems, but where you don't have to switch and you can just rotate around the perimeter playing its own defense. There's ways around the way they're doing it. It's more of an effort issue. I looked it up. The last team to make the tournament or the Final Four for the Big Ten is actually Michigan State and Cassius Winston. But this brings me to my next question, Jake. Is this more of a coaching issue or a player leadership issue?
It could be a little bit of both. But I've seen players in the Big Ten who are really good leaders. I don't know if you remember 2016, Yogi Ferrell was a multi-year senior, and I remember him like single-handedly trying to bring Indiana back against North Carolina in that 2015-16 March Madness. And there was a lot of effort. That team had OG Anunoby, it had Thomas Bryant, and that was a team with a lot of effort, Indiana. And Luka Garza, even though Iowa didn't work out, he was a leader. He played well and he played hard, and I respected the way Luka Garza played, even though the team overall wasn't built around him to succeed. But I do think it might be a coaching issue because we've seen Matt Painter fail time and time again. But even like, so I feel like maybe recently, like maybe this is about just a bad 2 years for the Big Ten because we remember the Carson Edwards year. Like, we remember Caleb Swanigan for Purdue. We remember Matt Harns. Purdue has had guys who will play hard and play good.
Even
Huh?
even Ivy. I thought Ivy was a good leader his year.
Yeah, Jaden Ivey's a good ball player. And so, I don't know. It has to be more of a coaching issue because I'm just seeing like basic things like I saw Lance Jones recently against Ohio State. He was late on a help defense on a guy driving. And if you know basic basketball, you know if you're on the interior or something and there's a guy driving, you help and then you rotate and you switch. And so it's kind of hard to describe without like a basketball court, but I'm just looking at the basics of defense not get met in important moments. And so Lance Jones not helping when he needs to, or being late to a help and leaving a wide open layup for Ohio State. That's you can't let that happen in March. It's not going to cut it and you're not going to win games because the teams that are going to win in March are going to execute and they're going to execute to perfection, almost perfection. And so you can't be messing up, you can't be missing assignments, you can't be playing lackluster defense. And so that's why teams like Illinois are going to be met with early exits. Purdue might even be met with early exits. I know people are so high on Purdue because, yes, their offense is way better than it was last year. But defensively, they're just as bad. And I worry for a lot of people because, I mean, and I was like that too. I was like, there's no way. Like, I'm still fighting with myself. There's no way. They're a 1 seed. They find ways to win games. But it's March, and we need to remember that March is whack. It is madness, and teams will win if they execute properly.
Yeah, talking about just like what you're going through, Jake. I'm looking at it. Last 10, they're 9-1. That loss was to Ohio State, but they're ranked third right now with Purdue. So y'all are all making great points, and it's tough to see. But you mentioned defense, and you talk about coaching. Matt Painter, of course, has been with Purdue for a long time, but I believe this could be his final year on his current contract. He signed an extension in 2018 to take him through the 23 to 24 season. So I believe that this season. Austin, am I correct on that? But could we see a change? He's been in there since 2005. He's high in the Purdue coaching rankings in all-time wins. You hinted at it. Would that be a drastic change for Purdue if this season doesn't go well for them?
I don't think that they move off of Painter. Unless they lose to a 16 seed again, which I think that they shoot well enough now. Last year they shot 32% from three. This year it's over 40. I believe they shoot well enough now to avoid that catastrophic of a exit. But if they lose to an 8 seed or a 9 seed, I don't think they get rid of Painter. And I kind of want to ask this to Jake. What is the ceiling of the conference overall?
Well, no matter how good Purdue might look, for this season, I see the ceiling. I think they all might be out by the Sweet 16. I mean, it's rough. And I think people don't – it's hard to see because they look good in a very bad conference. It's kind of like the difference between competition in SEC football versus ACC football. I mean, you have really good teams up and down the board, but you look at teams like, I don't know, what's a bad team in college football? They're the
ACC,
Tennessee,
like Georgia Tech.
Tennessee underperformed last year, right?
Mhm.
Tennessee, Arkansas, these are all teams that underperformed. These teams are still recruit well, and they still get good players. And because they're in a difficult conference, they look worse than they are. It's the same in the Big Ten. They're in an easier conference. They look better than they actually are because the entire Big Ten, for some reason, is infected with this virus of bad, lackluster defense. And so it looks like when you're watching, oh, Purdue's good. They're hitting shots. They're doing this and that. If you put them in a conference like the Big 12, they crumble because Big 12 defense in Austin, you can attest to this, is up and down the board the best defenses in college basketball. I mean, they play hard. They know their assignments. They know when to switch. They know how to help. They know how to wedge a screen. They know all this stuff that I was seeing Illinois and Purdue fail to do against 12 and 14 Penn State and second to last in the conference Ohio State. And so I think people need to recognize that the whole Big Ten has an issue, and it's not just these teams. And that's why they look better than they are, because all of them are infected with this. And so their ceiling, when they get to play teams like Houston or Iowa State or San Diego State or New Mexico, any of these like really good defensive teams in other conferences, they're going to struggle mightily because they haven't faced that competition all year. So I worry about the Big Ten once again this tournament.
And this isn't the best example. I'm going to try to explain it. It's a pretty sculpture, but the foundation is it can't hold. It's a pretty building, but the building's going to fall under pressure, under an earthquake. They aren't ready for what the other conferences bring. And this is a systematic issue. It can't be quick fixed. I don't see it as something, even if they have another good week or two before the conference tournament, I don't see Purdue being able to change enough to fix their problems. Their issues are so systematic that it will take a whole different coaching style or leadership from players to change how they play defense. Because, especially in Illinois' case, it didn't look like they cared in the game. I think Purdue shows a little bit more effort, even though their defense is just bad. Illinois, even Michigan State when they lost to Iowa, the defense, it doesn't seem like they cared. They're just getting free reign to cut to the basket, as you said, backdoor, or just drive. There were so many times they just drove and Illinois didn't really care to contest. Or Wisconsin beating Maryland and just letting Wisconsin hit wide open threes to extend the game. Yes, Wisconsin ended up winning the game eventually, but they didn't care to end it sooner. They didn't have a smell blood in the water type of attitude towards a much inferior team in Maryland. And I think that these issues really do concern me, you, and should concern a lot more people. I know that there's a lot of people in your life, Jake, you told me about, that really do believe in Purdue. And I've heard a lot of people online believe in Purdue, believe in Illinois, believe in Wisconsin. But I just don't see it. I've watched them play, and they just don't have the firepower or mentality to go far.
Yeah, and I've had people tell me straight up that I don't know ball because I say Purdue's not going to make it out of the Sweet 16. And I'm having people like so confidently say that Purdue's going to win the national championship. And my gut just tells me that is so wrong because I just watch them play. It's the eye test. I just watch them and I see, oh, wow, that's lazy. That's not going to cut it. Oh, wow. That was awful. And I'm sitting like watching these Big Ten games. Like Austin and I watched the Illinois versus Penn State game. And the only thing we could muster was that's terrible defense. Why didn't he help there? Why didn't he switch there? And then we watched the New Mexico-Colorado State game. And we were like, wow, that's good defense. Wow, that's a great shot. Wow, that's a good cut. Wow, great pass. It was just admiration for how well these teams were playing. But in the Big Ten, it was a nightmare. The only things we could see were the negatives because the negatives were so apparent to us. And so I feel like people who believe in Purdue, I'm happy for you. I believe in them if you want, but I'm going to advise against it. And if I'm wrong, if we're wrong about this and they go and they win the national championship, then we'll change our approach to everything basketball.
Clown us, please. Clown us.
Clown us.
We're saying it now. We're giving you the platform now to clown us if they do end up going to the Final Four, if they make a long championship run. But we obviously are confident enough to say that they won't. And I can't believe someone calls our college basketball expert a non-ball knower. It just kind of
they may not. They probably don't listen. They're not an outsiders.
They don't listen to outsiders. They don't know that I picked UConn to win the national championship last year. They don't know it. So
yeah. So we've talked about like Purdue and Illinois, and we've talked about the Big Ten. I kind of want to take a broader look. Is what do you think this harms college basketball that the Big Ten just does not perform or
That's a
recently
great
has not
question.
performed?
That's a great
Thanks.
question, Kevin. I want to give some props. Does this harm college basketball? I'm going to
Great.
say no, unless you don't follow. If you don't follow other conferences and you just follow the Big Ten or just follow the five that are in, or don't follow like the Mountain West or follow the American or follow some of these other really good conferences, then yes, I think it. If you don't watch those other conferences, it harms you as a basketball viewer. But no, because the Mountain West is really picking up the slack. They're going to have 6 teams in the tournament, maybe 5, but probably 6. And if you watch Mountain West basketball, I told Jake this literally last night. If you are a basketball fan and are not watching Mountain West basketball, you are harmed. You are not experiencing the full emotion level that is possible watching college basketball. So to answer it, I'll Jake will have to answer the same question. No, it doesn't harm you unless you're just constricted to the bubble that is the Big Ten. If you just go into all of college basketball, watch the truly good basketball games, no, I don't think it harms them because there's always going to be teams that don't play defense every year.
I think it both harms and helps. And now let me explain my stance. It helps in the sense that we are starting to see teams like FAU and South Florida and San Diego State, and now this year it's New Mexico and Colorado State. We're seeing these teams get on bigger platforms, and we're seeing the way that they play ball now because we don't want to watch Big Ten basketball anymore. I don't. And
Jake, you have to tell him what you said to me regarding the last games before the conference tournaments. You have to mention that. I want you to come out of your mouth about the scheduling, what happens on the Sunday before.
So the Sunday before the conference or the weekend before the conference tournaments, we get a full slate of really good games that Thursday through Saturday, right? UNC plays Duke. You got like Kansas versus Houston, I think. I mean, you get good matchups from good teams. And then that's all Thursday through Saturday. And then Sunday, it's just Big Ten basketball. It's nothing else because they have such an influence on networks and the NCAA as a whole because the Big Ten has a huge audience. And so, but the whole day, we're deprived of good basketball to end the season. Like, we're watching these teams, and I'll watch the games because there are teams that are going to make the March Madness. But it's not good basketball. I mean, it's just not. And then we get thrown into conference tournaments, and the Big Ten's going to be late, of course, to the party. So they're going to be one of the last conference championships. And so we get a whole day of Big Ten basketball, and it's a nightmare. So it harms in that way. It harms in that we are deprived of an entire conference that could be better than they are. Like, it's an entire conference with so many audiences, and they're watching bad basketball. And I don't like that. They could be doing so much better than they are. But it also helps in that we get to focus our attention on smaller schools with much bigger chips on their shoulder, who play hard, who play tough. And like last night, we were watching the Colorado State New Mexico rerun on a recording, and it was 2 of the best guards in the conference, Jalen House and Isaiah Stevens, for the last 6 minutes. Austin will attest this, going at each other, playing hard, tight defense, tough shots that they're making, like fighting over screens, and like it was brilliant guard play. And just the 2 of them against each other, like literally man on man against each other, and it was such good basketball. And that's the stuff we don't see in the Big Ten, and that's what we're getting deprived of because of the lack of effort I see in the Big Ten. And I feel like it's a problem they need to fix. Well, maybe they don't need to fix it because they still get viewers. They get their money. But like, if they want to win, there's a lot they got to change. And it all starts with, I think, the staff that they hire.
Yeah, well said. Great talk, and I like your opinion and your thoughts, and I agree on that. And talking about the Mountain West, do you think Big Ten and viewership historically, I'm sure. I'm not sure exact, so I'll defer to the history expert, sportsman Austin, for history on Big Ten. How do they compare against other conferences? And could Mountain West, if they got more prominence, could that affect their recruiting?
Oh, 100%. But I think people will always defer to the Big Ten. Like, if you're getting recruited, unless you're from the area, you're most likely to defer to the Big Ten unless they continue down this path of ruining their reputation. Again, the last team to make it was in 2019. That was pre-COVID. That seems like a decade ago. And their teams have only gotten worse. They've been less of quality on defense. And the Mountain West, yes, they can get better recruits. Yes, they can get more exposure. But if we're talking about the history of the Big Ten, they were really good in the 70s with Indiana. Michigan won a title in 89. Michigan State's been good in the 90s and aughts. But it's been a while since we've seen a really good Big Ten team. But I mean, it's possible to turn it around. Just I don't think it is this season.
Jake, how do you feel about all that?
Can you repeat the question again?
Just kind of talking about the prominence, what you were talking about, and could this affect the Big Ten recruitment or Mountain West recruitment? Kind of like
you
what
saying
Austin
if the Mountain West gets more viewership, could it help its recruiting compared to the Big Ten? And then how is the Big Ten viewership impacting kind of why people watch them?
Yeah, it definitely will. I mean, anytime you get more exposure, you're kind of in a way promoting your brand, you're promoting your group. And we're seeing a lot of really good coaches in the Mountain West. We're seeing Brian Dutcher from San Diego State. He's proving himself as a phenomenal coach. We're seeing Steve Alford from Nevada. We're seeing now Richard Pitino at New Mexico. They're having a phenomenal year, but their coaching seems solid. They're coaching the right things for winning basketball, and the Big Ten is missing that. I mean, they still have Tom Izzo. They have Painter, who's created a couple NBA prospects, but if you think about it, all the best. Jaden Ivey's the one good NBA prospect that I remember coming out of Purdue as of recent memory.
Yeah, when you think a lot of the best Big Ten players, they don't actually translate. But Kevin, you look at the Clippers, and you have two Mountain West players, Paul George out of Fresno State and San Diego State's Kawhi Leonard. There's very good players coming out of the Mountain West. And I think that's even bigger an impact is how do those players perform in the NBA? That will actually get people to want to go there because you're proving that you can help develop players to the next level.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Jaden Ivey, while he's good, the Pistons did have one of the league or history worst losing record that we talked about in other parts of our show. But that's all the questions I got. It's really good. I like this idea and just talking about the Big Ten. And we'll go Jake and then Austin. I'll let you close this out. Jake, any closing thoughts and then Austin, you can close it out.
Any closing thoughts from me are gonna end up being like, just be mindful. Like it's not that big of a deal. It's college basketball, but it's fun to be into it. And so if you're into it, be mindful of what actually makes a winning basketball team. How do you win games? It's effort, it's communication, it's defense. It's not just the big names. It's not just on paper the numbers. There is an eye test level of involvement you need to just be able to see, wow, this team meshes well together. And so I would strongly recommend taking your time to actually look at the way that they move on the court, on the floor, how they communicate, because that is what's going to win you a championship. That's how I knew UConn was going to win last year. That's how Austin knew San Diego State was going to go to at least the Final Four. He thought they were going to win the championship. And they got pretty close. They made it all the way. And so we'd like to think that we know what we're talking about. And last year helped bolster that, maybe our egos a little bit. But we hope that you guys are become just as mindful as us when we watch the game, because we watch with such intent to understand the way it's played. And so I hope you guys can also do the same.
Yeah, this is not trying to get political at all, but whenever you care about something, I implore you as the viewer to do your own research. Jake and I watch games consistently. And so if you disagree with us, that's fine. Go watch the games. And I promise you, you will see what we are seeing. So, again, just for all teams, this is not just Big Ten. Watch who you think is good. Watch them play their games, especially when the conference tournament turns around. And you'll see what you like and dislike. You don't have to take our opinions for it. Go watch games. If you disagree with our opinions, before you comment something hateful, we don't hate Purdue. We don't hate the Big Ten. Just watch them play. And if you disagree at that point, you can make your own decisions, even though we'll advise against it. But thank you guys for listening. Please catch us in our next video, and March is right around the corner.